We have no quarrel with you.
You're a long way from Crest Coast, Sapien Cast.
My name is Jean Grey. This is my husband, Scott Summers.
You may call me Mother Askani, leader of Clan Askani.
I sense no need to be afraid.
Nathan. Come.
Nathan.
Do not fear us. What is your name?
My name is En Sabanur.
Oh dear.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Puny Pod.
Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to another Puny Pod, a short-form podcast where I visit a specific film or comic book all by myself. And yes, it's part 2 in what I'm calling Augustalypse. So it's 2 X-Men comics back-to-back for this month of August. And yes, the kind of the alpha, the beginning of Apocalypse and his journey, and also this story, his end or omega, if you will. Whether or not this is in continuity anymore and within the timey-wimey stuff, I don't believe it is, but we'll see. It may be a slightly different timeline or what have you, but we'll get into that. But I'm talking today about The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, written by Scott Lobdell and with art by Gene Ha. Now, this is kind of the origin story of Cable, really, kind of how he got there, and it's a long kind of history. I would really recommend going on uncannyxmen.net and looking at their character spotlights if you want to get a full, beat by beat understanding of the history of all the characters and how they got there, and the different variations and various notes. I've used it for years, kind of to I'll leave it in the show notes, but it's a really succinct and clear and concise kind of history of each character, giving you every bit of information you need to know, the kind of grand swaths of it. I looked at it myself recently for this, just to kind of find out where we were in that sort of in the history of everything. Now, this is quite heavily connected to a lot of the continuity and the lore and different timelines, which I'm going to go through into. But I think the book does a good job of balancing all that and kind of getting you invested in this story and not having to worry too much about all the other stories that are tied in, connected to it. I think you would benefit from knowing about them and reading them, because I think they're good for the most part. I think Lobdell balances those aspects while still telling an engaging and interesting and fun and action-packed story. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we open with Scott and Jean waking up in this very futuristic, very unusual building that is exploding. Everything's being destroyed, and they awake and they're kind of hung up and they're kind of strung up, both of them, and they're in bodies they're not entirely familiar with. They don't look exactly like they do in their original bodies, and they also learn that they're human as well. They don't have their mutant DNA or powers as of yet. So while all of this is going on, we learn that they were on their honeymoon, basically, splashing about on the beach, and they have been pulled through 2 years 2,000 years into their future by Mother Askani. Now, Mother Askani is Rachel Summers. Spoilers for potentially X-Men 97 again for this book, so just bear that in mind. So Mother Askani is Rachel Summers. She ended up 2,000 years, or maybe not 2,000 years, but a little less, as she's now an old woman. She was at the wedding of Scott and Jean, and then she went away and realised that she was the only person who could replace Captain Britain in the time stream because he was stuck there and trapped there. So it was her responsibility, knowing she'd met Jean, and Jean had said that they're going to get married and have a baby. So she was happy with the way things were going there, and knew good things were coming. So she made that sacrifice to replace Brian Braddock, who is Captain Britain, in the time stream. But this led her to be thrown 2,000 years into the future, where Apocalypse reigns. He has created a caste system with mutants or Homo superior at the top. Then you've got the sapien caste, and then you've got the synth cons, who are basically robots or androids below human beings. And yeah, it's a dystopic kind of nightmare, but it's not. It's kind of the opposite end of what Rachel lived in. She lived in a time where humans were on top and mutants were the lower caste, basically, because she lived in the days of Future's Past timeline when the Sentinels ruled, basically, and took over. And she decides to form Askani, Clan Askani. Now, Clan Askani is the closest approximation in the modern kind of language and parlance that meant family of outsiders. So it was the closest thing she could name her group, her religious order, whatever you want to call it, without calling them explicitly X-Men. So that's what she chose. And knowing that Nathan Christopher Summers would be infected with the Techno-Organic virus by Apocalypse, which again happened in, I think, around issue 56 of X Factor, I believe. And then Jean and Scott have to give him over to a woman called Askani to be taken into the future to protect him and hopefully save his life from this Techno-Organic virus, which they do. Which, continuity-wise, this happened before, but yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, so they gave up and they sent the child to the future, and it was Rachel who brought the child. Askani died as she came through the portal, but the child was okay, and the child was suffering with this Techno-Organic virus so much they decided to create a clone who would, within this story, come to be known as Strife. And it's a healthy clone, does not have the Techno-Organic virus, but is a complete duplicate of the child that would come to be known as Cable. So we have that. This attack is Apocalypse's forces attacking Clan Askani, looking for that child, because Apocalypse prepared that child with his own Techno-Organic virus, which actually Cable, as an older self, went back further in time when Apocalypse was younger and infected him with that same virus. Which is his own blood mixed with Apocalypse's. Again, very confusing, lots of time travel, lots of shenanigans. But yes, so that's the idea. He's preparing him. And in this version, again, I talked about the hypocrisy of Apocalypse in the previous podcast, and this is kind of where it starts coming in. This is what introduces that idea of him having multiple bodies and things like that, and hosts to contain his raw power. This is what introduces that as well. So Cable was brought into the future by Rachel, another child of Jean and Cyclops from another time, in order to save his life, because they are, in fact, related to a degree. They have that, and what she also does is bring Scott and Jean's minds forward into the future, much like she did in Days of Future's Past, when she projected Kitty's mind into the past to stop the assassination of Senator Kelly and to stop the timeline that would be the Days of Future's Past timeline. Lots of heavy lore dumping, I know, but I kind of need to go through this in order to get into the story story. So she pulls them in, but she gives them bodies but do not have their superpowers and look a little bit different. So they're kind of adjusting and they're trying to figure out what is going on. And they meet up with Rachel, who kind of saves them from the Apocalypse's forces because they're trapped and they don't know how to really. They're still getting used to these bodies and don't know what to do, and they don't have access to their powers. So it's one of those things. So so they're attacked by Apocalypse's forces, led by a guy called, I'm going to pronounce it this way, it's CH'Vayre. So I'm going to say Javert. Not Javert, but Javert. And he is basically Apocalypse's second in command, and he believes in his tenets and his rhetoric of survival of the fittest. So much so, that he's kind of... I'll get into it later, but anyway, he attacks them, and they manage to escape because Rachel is able to attack them with the vestiges of her remaining power, being this elderly woman. And she explains the whole situation, everything I've just explained that's explained to them. They basically, this whole issue is kind of set in the stage and set in the scene. And again, I think it does it quite well because this could be a bit much for like new readers or even old readers might be a bit lost to try and catch up with all the characters. Like Strife we've already seen in the comics, Cable we've already seen in the comics in adult forms. We've seen, it's got a lot of kind of, this is why, in the Deadpool 2 movie, they kind of avoided a lot of the trappings of Cable's origin because it does get a bit continuity, timey-wimey, retcon this, retcon that, kind of heavy. So, initially that Cable was not created to be a future version of Nathan Dayspring, Askani Summers. He was not designed to be that. He was designed to be his own character, and then later on down the line, the seeds were sown. I think there was fan theories that posited him as that character, as Nathan Summers, and that's kind of what eventually would happen and would occur, and this is part of that story. So Rachel saves them from Javert, and actually, while explaining this to them and the situation and why they're here and what they're doing, because she wanted to bring them in order to teach Cable how to control his powers, how to raise him, because they never got the chance to. It gives them that ability to do so. While she's explaining this, she also restores their mutant powers. So initially the bodies were human, but she's able to kind of bring their powers back, and Cyclops has full control over his optic blast, so he doesn't need a visor or anything like that. And Javert attacks again, and at this point he tries to draw them out by sacrificing a child, which does turn out to be Cable. They've captured Strife, who they believe to be Cable, but it's actually the clone. And they're ready to sacrifice this child because he has the Techno-Organic virus. He's misshapen, malformed. He's not one of the fittest, so to speak. So they believe they have the prize, and they're giving up this prize, or they're going to kill this prize, this other child, because they have the one they think is the one they need. So, and then Cyclops and Jean surprise Javert with their powers, manage to escape with the child, Nathan, and with Rachel as well. The following issue, we jump ahead about 8 years or so, and they are returning to, or quote unquote returning to, a place called Crest Coast, which is the main location where Apocalypse is based and Javert is based, and they are going there because there was papers drawn up by Rachel to allow them passage to stay there and be there. They also sent Rachel there before them because she is now in a coma, as she was struggling, and in the last issue she's now fallen into a coma, and Nathan is now much older, and he's your typical kind of child. He's a bit rebellious. He's a bit like, I don't understand. There's a little bit of a whininess to him, but luckily we don't. That could have annoyed me, I think, in a comic. I think if there was a lot of that, like, why me, poor me kind of thing, it didn't it didn't stay. It didn't keep. It's about the adventure. It's about bringing down Apocalypse and this rebellion and things. So I'm glad they didn't kind of stay on that too much, but you can see that they're very doting and caring, and they're parents who kind of can get slightly ticked off by him, which I like. They're not the perfect parents. They're struggling. They don't know how to parent, neither of them, so they're still trying to learn it and still trying to navigate this world. And they're teaching him and helping him hide his techno-organic virus so they're not detected, because they're trying to pass as human, part of the sapien caste. And they go in and they're trying to get by, but them speaking in Old English, technically, which is a language still spoken but not as often in this time. It's a different language altogether. I don't know what they call the language, but they call the relatively Old English, the normal language we have now, the modern speech, the modern dialect. That is not what's spoken in the future. So they are caught out and they're almost killed and almost abused and almost taken to Chevere as well, until this character called Turing comes in, who's a cyborg warrior who sees the child, and it's implied that they know each other, or they're aware of each other, or they knew that they were coming, because they talk about Rachel being delivered safely and securely. So, and we learn that Turing is part of the kind of Clan Askani way of thinking and the rebellion against Apocalypse and his, racism and bigotry, towards the humans and robots and stuff. So yeah, all the while we're introduced to Apocalypse himself. He's now raising Strife, names him Strife after one of his ancient enemies, apparently. And we see that the kind of upper echelon of Apocalypse's mutant caste are now living in absolute decadence. They've grown fat and lazy and slovenly, slobbish, and are all about kind of just gaining pleasure, being in pleasure, having pleasure. And Chevere hates this. It goes against every tenet and dogmatic, Darwinism that Apocalypse ever dictated. And Apocalypse has also, because of his power, he's burning out these bodies faster and faster. And the preparation of Nathan was the idea that if he can survive the techno-organic virus, which apparently Strife has, or he believes Strife has, was strong enough to survive it, that he will make for a permanent host body, that you won't have to constantly go through all these different bodies and burning them out. He can just survive on that one body because it will hold the power, it'll be able to access the power, but it'll also contain the power as well of Apocalypse successfully. So that's the plan. So he's even accelerating the boy's mutant powers, and he is a snotty, horrible little brat. He kills his tutors and instructors on a whim, and he absolutely adores Apocalypse, though. He's like, oh, my child, and Apocalypse lets him get away with murder, to Chevere's indignation. And he keeps challenging Apocalypse. He's like, you're going against everything your dogma dictates. Why don't you save your immortal soul by not continuing to do this? He's just a child. Why are we doing this? And Apocalypse he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He'll let the child do what it wants, and he'll do what he needs to do to survive. He's the survivor, and he doesn't mind sacrificing so-called lesser beings for his survival, which is interesting. And he's a very old wizened man with a kind of grey skin and in these robes, and he lives inside kind of a robotic shell and robotic Apocalypse body with a kind of a floating head. It's kind of to display his power to others. I think this is only ever in private we ever see the chest open up and the little wizened old Apocalypse come out. So yeah, there is that, and yeah, we see kind of how kind of Nathan navigates his life. He feels kind of hard done by. He's got this disease. He's feels like he's having to hide, and Scott and Jean are not have not revealed who they are to him. They've decided because it's best not to, but for some reason they say, oh, he was abandoned by his parents. He was, he was left to shot off into the future, kind of thing. Which is, it's a strange thing to tell him, but I guess maybe because of the way the timeline is and the way he needs to learn these things when he does. I think there's probably a reason for that, but again, it hurts him, and they're always saying, you'll never be alone, we'll always be with you. So they are Slim and Red. They go by Slim and Red. It's not to give away who they are, and again, they look completely different, similar but completely different from who they were at the time, and yeah, so that's their kind of story and how they're getting on. So this leads us on to kind of the third issue where Cable's struggling with his powers, and again he's whining and being is upset and doesn't really understand what's going on and what his part in all this is, and again they can't reveal it to him without kind of again potentially upsetting the timeline, I believe. But Jean is slowly but surely showing Cable how to use his powers, how to conceal his cybernetics and get by. Turin and Jean and Scott are now part of a rebellious group that Nathan is not aware of, but he kind of sneaks around and they're going to talk to Scott's going to talk to him in the morning to kind of because he's in a kind of a dark place, Cable at the moment, or Nathan. So he's going to speak to him and kind of talk to him about stuff and figure out how to navigate this. So they go off onto a mission and they find what they believe to be the legacy virus, or what would become the legacy virus. The legacy virus in the comics after Executioner's Song, which is a story heavily tied into this one, is basically a virus that was supposed to kill just humans and leave the mutant caste, so Homo superior caste, untouched. But they're not quite figured out how to stop it from killing mutants, because technically mutants are also humans, so there you go. It's kind of a racist virus, but again, it's something that we find out in Executioner's Song, that after Strife's defeat and after him and Cable are thrown through the time stream in that one, that he's left it behind for Mr. Sinister, who opens it, and it seemingly has nothing in it, but it is the legacy virus, and it was used kind of as an allegory in the comics for the AIDS virus, where mutants are blamed for AIDS, mutants are blamed for the legacy virus, much like gay people, and were blamed for the outcoming and the ongoing problems with AIDS. They were blamed. It's a gay disease, that type of thing. So it's an allegory they use, and some really interesting stories told with it and done with it, and eventually there's a big sacrifice is made to eventually cure that virus, not without characters being dead already. But yeah, so we have that, and Nathan's there, and Nathan is being communicated to by somebody, a voice, which turns out to be Rachel, who is in her coma but still assisting, and gives him the information in his brain to assist in this battle. So as they arrive and try and figure out what to do with the legacy virus, Javert and Strife, the young Strife, arrive, and it's basically an ambush for them. They were waiting for them, and Slim and Red have to reveal that they're mutants to their other rebellious partners in the Askani kind of clan, and they continue to fight back, and Nathan is confronted by Strife himself, and their brains almost kind of have a psychic kind of connection. They're thinking the same thoughts, but it's something more, and they realize they're connected in some way, but not directly. They don't know for sure why they are like that. But Rachel supercharges Cable's powers, enabled to knock Strife out. He activates the self-destruct program in the facility they're in, and they are all able to escape from Javert, and then Javert takes Strife back. And yeah, that's the end of that story, leading on to the final issue, the 4th issue. And it has basically, because of the supercharging of his powers and his oncoming mutancy and his maturation of his mutant powers, his techno-organic virus has now kind of it was in regression for some time, but now it's kind of supercharged along with his mutant powers, and it's killing him, and he's slowly dying and going into a coma. And Scott refuses to leave his side because he felt he's abandoned him once before and that he won't do it again. And Jean has to go off and fight Apocalypse and stop his legacy virus, because the idea is he's going to take over Strife's body and he's going to enact this legacy virus, killing all who are not strong enough to survive. So the idea is he's still going to release it regardless if it kills mutants or it kills humans. He doesn't care, because the dogma and the dogmatic idea is that the strongest will survive, whoever they may be. And yeah, so Javert is completely against this, completely against the sacrificing of Strife. He's made it abundantly clear, at every juncture, that he feels like Apocalypse is going down the wrong path and doing the wrong thing, and accelerating the child and his growth, not letting the child be a child. And even though he believes in survival of the fittest, Javert's still somewhat honourable. He doesn't want to just kill random people or kill anybody that that comes that exists, because apparently by the holy law you can only kill someone if Apocalypse has given the word to do so. But even Apocalypse doesn't really give a shit at this point. He's completely self-involved, and it's all about his survival. Nobody else's. He doesn't care. He'll sacrifice everybody just so he can survive. So he started this ceremony, this exchanging of power. Again, you see this in various other comics like the 12. You see that he's like an old wizard man underneath. And you see it in the movie as well, the X-Men Apocalypse movie. You see him transitioning between one host body to the next, which is again this is kind of where this begins. That idea begins here in this book. And yeah, so Javert is captured and abducted and taken away. Jean and Turing go to this place to stop the connection, the passing of the psyche and power from Apocalypse to Strife. And Apocalypse is talking about how he's outlived everybody: Sinister, Magneto, Xavier, and even Holocaust, his own son Holocaust. He outlived, and and he's about to kind of bridge the gap between him and the child, and realizes at this point, right at the last minute, that it's actually a clone, that he's not the child that he infected with the techno-organic virus to prepare him to be his host. This is not that child. So he's kind of is like, oh no, it's not what I thought it would be. But he accepts that he's going to just use the body anyway, because it'll hold the power for a bit of time, but not permanently. And this is when Javert and Jean come in, and he strikes back, and he's throwing all this energy at them, and all this kind of, I don't know, cosmic energy, whatever you want to call it, or and he can energy manipulate. So just blasts of some kind, energy blasts. During his coma, Nate is visited by Rachel again, and she explains that you can do this. You have the power to do this, to hold this virus at bay. Yes, it will result in your powers being somewhat lowered, because you're going to be constantly fighting this virus and holding it back. That's why Cable resorts to guns and other stuff, because he can't really use his mutant powers as well as he would like. But yeah, I think again it varies from comic to comic, story to story, but sometimes it's under control and he can use his psychic powers, then it's not, then it is, then it's not. So yeah, that depends on the story and when in his timeline you're talking about. But he's taught basically by Rachel, and Rachel kind of supercharges his powers again, helps him and gives him guidance, her little brother, so to speak, and assists him with that. the ability to do that. So yeah, and he pulls himself together. It looks like he dies, and Scott's like, he's not dead, and he pulls himself together, and then he knows, because Rachel's told him, that Jean is in trouble. Jean is in danger. Apocalypse and Javert can't handle him alone. So Cyclops and Nathan go there, and then you get this big, wonderful kind of shot of them kind of all using their powers together in unison, and Apocalypse is like, it's only Xavier could have done this. He's cursed me, or Mother Askani has done this. And they're fighting, and they realize he's, Apocalypse is like, I'm powerful enough, I don't need anybody. And they realize, well, that can't be true, because he's going to put his body in Strife. Why would he need Strife? So what Nathan does is he severs the connection between Apocalypse and Strife, leading to Apocalypse kind of withering away and dying. And that's how it ends. At this point, the connection that Scott and Jean have to the future is dissipating. They're kind of blinking in and blinking out of time. And Rachel explains that she's the one that's held them there. She's been the anchor to keep them in the future. But now she's dying, and she's losing that connection, and they're slowly leaving the time stream. And there's this big kind of heartfelt goodbye from Jean and Rachel, and Jean agrees to take on the Phoenix code name again in honor of Rachel. And Scott says goodbye to Nathan, and he explains that he will always have a family. He'll always be with someone. Their thoughts and feelings will always be with him, no matter what happens, where he goes, what he does, and to kind of keep Xavier's dream alive. And he says he'll be a cable that will connect the past, the present, and the future, today, yesterday, and tomorrow, all this sort of stuff. So it kind of gives him the code name as well, to be that. And it kind of is a little, I don't think Cable's particularly good code name anyway, but it is the name that he was given. So there you have it. But yeah, and yeah, it ends, and Scott and Jean go back to finish their honeymoon. Basically, they wake up on the beach, and all's good as far as I'm aware. But yeah, but then Javert is like, I think I will try and raise this child Strife, so he doesn't become the chaos bringer that Apocalypse named him as, or prophesized him as, even though Strife loves Apocalypse, wanting to be Apocalypse's heir, believes himself to be Apocalypse's heir. Javert says he'll try and do that, and try and bring him up right, and undo all the brainwashing. But Cable says, don't worry about me. Apocalypse destroyed the dream, but I'm going to bring it back. And that's basically how the story ends, and that's it. I have to say, this is a much better story than Rise of Apocalypse. I met Gene Ha, the artist, a few years ago when we did Multi-Comic-Con. I've still got him on Facebook. He's a lovely guy. I told him that I'd read this story, in fact, and he was like, "Oh yeah, really? Yeah, that's. I remember that one." But he did say it was very early on in his artist kind of journey, his art style. But I like it. It's very stylized, quite unique, a bit different. And again, he's gone out of his way to make it not look like, Days of Futures Past or something like that. It's a very different future that we're kind of exposed to. And yeah, I think it works. I like the depiction of the techno-organic virus is kind of disturbing and scary and weird and unique. And again, they talk about this living metal has veins and blood pumping through it, so it is like living. It's a living thing. It's fascinating that it's not just a robot arm. He is. There's more to it than that, which is kind of amazing, really. And yeah, Gene's art style is totally different now. It's completely different, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I still liked this artwork and the way it was depicted, and very strange and unusual kind of bodies and characters. Like Javert's like this huge guy with a tiny head, and Apocalypse's kind of wizened old body, but in this massive kind of armored suit. And yeah, I like how he depicts Slim and Red that are not quite Jean Grey and quite Scott Summers, but they are, and it's a nice little balancing act he does there, because it does feel like those characters, even though they aren't technically not those characters. Even Mother Askani, I think, is great. And I think it kind of ties the kind of X-Men world together, and the idea of family, and it doesn't matter what they've been through, where they've gone, what time stream they're from, timeline they're from. They're all still connected by the dream and by each other. So yeah, it's a wonderful little story, and yeah, I do think maybe it might be a little, for some people, I think it might be like, what the fuck is going on a little bit, but I think you can still enjoy it for what it is. I think it does help if you know the continuity and know the kind of stuff behind what's going on, really. But I don't think it's entirely necessary. I think the writing is good, the characterization is good. Again, Cable could have been very whiny and uninteresting, but I think there's enough here where it feels like this is the beginnings of that character. This is the beginnings of strife, and it's all connected. And I love that. I love the idea of comic book universes all being tied in and connected together. Yeah, sometimes it can be a bit much, but I think this story kind of fits, and I think it's important. There are 2 different books you can get featuring this, 2 collections. There's one I think called Cyclops and Phoenix, Times Future or Times Past, something like that. I'll leave it in the show notes. And there's one that collects not only this story, it collects Askani'son miniseries, which is the follow-up to this story, where he's a teenager or lad in his young 20s, Cable, and it kind of shows a bit more of strife and Chevere and some other stuff going on, and Cable's history and how he gets to being who he is. And then also it collects the Phoenix miniseries, which explains how Rachel went from going into the future to becoming Mother Askani as well. So there's 2 collections. So if you wanted a bit more of this, you could carry on that way, but you could do the Cyclops and Phoenix one. So that's the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, and then the Further Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix as well. That features Apocalypse again, but this time it's in Victorian England, and it's about the origin of Mr. Sinister. I might do that maybe again. I do own a physical copy of that, so I might bring that out again and read that. It's been a while again since I read it. I'm not sure how I enjoyed it or not. I did enjoy revisiting this one. I don't remember enjoying it as much, but on a revisit, I did quite enjoy this. And yeah, I think Scott Lobdell it was his birthday yesterday, the day of recording. It was his birthday yesterday. So I think he does a great job with this. He balances a lot. He's spinning a lot of plates here, but I think he does it very well and very expertly. It's never, there's never too much action, there's never too much character or lore or time travel bollocks or anything like that. The continuity is there, and the continuity helps and enhances the story, but I also don't think you necessarily need it. It's basically, estranged parents meet up with their child again, try and protect him and educate him and parent him and prepare him for who he's going to be and what he needs to do. It's not going to be an easy life for him, but it's going to be a just one, basically. So yeah, that is it, really. I can understand people not. It can be a bit daunting to look at this story and go, what? Who's that? What does that mean? Who's this? But again, I would probably reference that website again if you want to look up Strife's history, Cable's history, Rachel's history. It's all on there. Apocalypse's history is there as well. Again, I'll link in the website I'll link to the website on the show notes, because if you don't, I think it would help if you have maybe even a brief understanding of the story. But again, there will be spoilers, obviously, if you read that. But yeah, there's something there to it, and I just like the idea. I like that this family can come together in spite of all these odds and time and war and all this sort of stuff going on. I thought it's a really fun, really good story, great little miniseries. I don't remember. I did read Askani'son. I didn't read the Phoenix miniseries, but I remember reading Askani'son. I thought it was okay, I remember, but I probably would like to reread that just to kind of see how well it's aged. I don't know if maybe when I was reading it, I wasn't fully versed on it, or I wasn't open to it, or I'm not sure. But I'll leave that for today. Thank you very much. As always, you can find me on my website. So it's spiderdanandsecretboars.com. I'm no longer on X. I'm on Threads, and that's spiderdansecretboars as the my username for both Instagram and on Threads. Do all the good stuff. I want to thank my patrons as well. You know all the good people that do all the good things. Yes, I forgot to note all their names down, but you know the people. I've said them every week for God knows how long. I thank you all. Thank you very much for bearing with me, and I'm going to put out some more Patreon content very, very soon. There is a Patreon poll that's come to an end recently that, again, Andy's not particularly happy with the result, but there you go. Sorry, Andy. You can't win them all. But yes, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, do subscribe to the Pop Culture Collective newsletter as well. I'll leave that in the show notes again, as always. But yeah, thank you again, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of deep dive into Apocalypse, Cable, and all that. Being inspired by X-Men 97 and maybe where that might be headed, because we do see at the end of that show that we are heading there. We are going to see whether it will be depicted like this or whether it will be depicted differently. Time will tell. Again, there's a lot of controversy up in the air about the original writer at the moment. I won't really comment on that, but we'll just have to see what comes out of the second season. I hope it's all good. I hope it's all positive. I don't want it to be a disappointment. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see how they approach that. But yeah, thanks again, guys, and as always, prepare for Prattle.